question today to clarify how the humans were created here on Earth.
A long time ago, Earth was kind of hidden. The first one that came to this planet are the beings from Lyra, which are very advanced spiritually and technologically. And then they left. Because they are so telepathic, they told others about this planet. It happened that in the constellation of the Pleiades, there were 11 colonies. One colony in each planet. One of these planets was destroyed by the Alpha Draconians. So many of these Pleiadians were homeless, and some moved to some of the planets in the vicinity, but some were curious about Earth. They came here and they loved the planet, and they could breathe the oxygen here. The only thing that was difficult for them was the radiation of the sun. They have really pale skin and not strong enough for the sun rays. So they used to come out mostly in the afternoons. Many of them were close to the poles with less sun radiation. And they decided to stay here because their bodies were not behaving correctly with this atmosphere and with the sun especially. They decided to create a body that could withstand the sun radiation. So they created the human body, but a very different human body. Back then, the human body had 12 strands of DNA with one in the center and the strands going out. Not all interlinked, but going out, two here and two here, and other ones going this way and this way, united by a center. So, the human body was fantastic back then. They were very smart. And also, it had an energy that used to ascend through the spinal cord, awakening all these crystalline chakras or centers. The Asuntara used to have 4 filaments, 2 in one side and 2 in the other, that intercrossed. The Asuntara was very active back then. So they called the Arcturians, and were the only ones that could put a soul into a clone. But this whole process was done with utmost care, with Adonai present, since the Arcturians are enlightened. They are part of Adonai. Adonai is part of them. So we can say that Adonai was blessing this whole experiment. They had a trial, and they put several of the Pleiadian souls into these new bodies. They had amazing powers, psychic powers. They could even move things psychically, telekinesis, that's what you call it. They could astral travel easily, levitate. They had all the 9 inferior powers and the 9 superior powers. These very strong bodies lasted for hundreds of years. Some planets in this Alpha Draco constellation or star systems began to destroy their planet. Or by then, their planet was pretty much destroyed because the Alpha Draconians, or Anunnaki as you call them, they destroy everything that they see or touch. They are almost like an extension of the nebula. And because their planet was almost destroyed, they knew that with certain minerals they could, in a way, avert or slow down the process of annihilation of their own culture or planet. So they understood that in other planets they could find these minerals. One was gold, and lamentably, Earth had a lot of gold. They came here. By then, Earth had two continents that were very big, the continent of Lemuria and the continent of Atlantis. In Lemuria, the Pleiadians that didn't want to change bodies, they preferred to stay there in Lemuria. It was a place with less sun, and they were also overlooking the experiment. And the Pleiadians inside the human bodies took a place where there was more sun because they love sunny days. They took Atlantis and they were living in peace. They were friends. It was fantastic what was happening back then in planet Earth. They were so advanced and everybody was so happy until the Alpha Draconians or Anunnakis came. It was in this moment that they engaged in a horrible war, since the Alpha Draconians are very powerful warriors. But they had no chance with the human beings, and they actually began to lose the battle. Here is when a really powerful being from the nebula possessed one of their leaders, and it had a molecular composition of a terrible virus. They produced this virus and sprayed the whole Earth atmosphere. The Pleiadians that stay in their original body, they didn't feel the virus at all. But the ones in the human bodies began to go crazy. Their DNA began to collapse. Many of their strands, even the ones in the astral body, began to burn with a dark and sticky substance, and they began to melt and change and transform. And together with this, the whole planet, every single living thing here, with the exception of the Pleiadians, their DNA began to take a particular form with only two strands, everything. So the planet became more familiar for this Anunnaki race. It was similar to their planet. The vegetation changed, the animals changed, everything changed, and everything became more aggressive. Lamentably, the humans went completely insane, and they began to fight not only the Alpha Draconians, but also the Pleiadians, which in turn didn't want to fight with their own creation and their own soul friends. But these souls were so confused by the power of this dark virus that they completely forgot who they were. The Lemurians, in turn, began to inhabit hidden areas inside Earth. The humans didn't want to be dominated, and they began to fight. And they began to use atomic energy that was produced back then by some kind of pyramidal crystal, huge pyramid. And this, actually, this power, so intense and so magnificent, that began to act on its own. And these humans could not control it. There was a huge explosion that obliterated most of them. So now The Alpha Draconians took advantage and came into Earth, picked up most of these humans, did some further DNA manipulation, and used them as slaves to dig gold. And from here, everything began to spiral down. The Celestial9 came back then, and they tried to help the human race. But whatever manipulation or energetic manipulation they did, they understood that these human bodies were not capable of handling any kind of energy or manipulation. And most of them died